Donny van de Beek has been linked with a move to Celtic, but is it going to happen? Let's get into it. So the season is almost upon us and the transfer window is heating up, as is the content on this channel. If you like this channel, you want to get the huddle breakdown across the season, as well as other content that's going to be on the channel for the coming season, make sure to like, subscribe, and leave a comment as well. So this report comes from 90minutes.com. It says that Manchester United midfielder Donny van de Beek wants to leave the club after a couple of lackluster seasons. Van de Beek joined the club in 2020 but has failed to make an impact, playing just 34 times across the Premier League when he was at Manchester United. Now, he did spend some time on loan at Everton as well. They were battling relegation at the time, but he did fail to make an impact on their midfield as well. And with Manchester United bringing in Mason Mount into their midfield, it's highly unlikely that he's going to get many more minutes across next season. So essentially, Van de Beek wants to leave Manchester United, and Manchester United want Van de Beek to leave. Now, according to the reports, Manchester United ideally want to sell Van de Beek, but a loan move could also be an option. It's said that there are several clubs across Europe that are looking at him. Serie A clubs are looking to sign him, and some mid-table Premier League sides are looking into bringing him to the club as well. So what about Celtic? Well, according to the reports, Celtic are also interested and have said that they are interested in bringing him to the club to bolster the midfield. But is this realistic, and what would he bring? In short, it's not a very realistic move for Celtic unless it's a very favourable loan deal. Van de Beek is on a reported €120,000 per week at Manchester United. So it's fair to say Celtic cannot afford his wages unless he is on loan, and Manchester United are paying most of those wages. Since Manchester United want to sell him ideally, it's unlikely that they're going to send him out on loan when they have to pick up the bill for his wages.
Cannot afford.
Can Celtic afford to buy him outright if that's the case? The answer to that is probably no as well. Donny van de Beek has 2 years left on his deal at Manchester United, would cost in the range of 20 to 25, maybe even 30 million at a push. Plus the wage issue still comes into play there. Even if Celtic could afford to buy him in transfer money, they still cannot afford to pay him the wages that he was on. He would still have to take 100, maybe 90k of a wage reduction. Highly unlikely if there are other clubs that are going to be able to pay him more. Celtic probably aren't really in this battle at all.
Cannot afford.
But let's just pretend that they are. Let's just pretend it is a realistic option. Let's just pretend that I'm wrong about everything that I just said, which I could be. I could be wrong. So let's pretend that Celtic are actually after Donny van de Beek and it is a realistic option for him to come to the club. What would he bring to the club? Well, if we compare him to players who are already at the club in similar positions, so I went Rio Hatate, Matt O'Reilly and Cal McGregor, the midfielders that start for Celtic currently, it's not a perfect comparison because Van de Beek has played much fewer minutes across the last 2 seasons, and the league quality has to be brought into account here as well. When Donny van de Beek was playing, he was playing in the Premier League against better players than Matt O'Reilly and Rio Hatate and Cal McGregor. So that is the context to these numbers, but these are the numbers nonetheless. So as you can see, he has played much fewer minutes over the last couple of seasons. 25 matches played, only 1,000 minutes in comparison to Cal McGregor's 7,000 minutes. He has an XG of 1.64, 2 goals in those minutes played. And then if you look at the underlying numbers, so per 90 minutes, how does he compare? Well, in terms of his XG per 90 minutes, he's at 0.15, just behind O'Reilly and behind Hatate. XA, so across the 90 minutes expected assists, O'Reilly leads this, 0.24, Hatate 0.15, Van de Beek is 0.1, and McGregor is 0.09. So he's not creating a lot of chances in terms of his creative output from the midfield. In terms of dribbles, how does he compare to the midfielders in terms of dribbles? Well, Hatate leads this, 3.33 dribbles per 90 minutes. O'Reilly is 3.16. Van de Beek is 1.77. And McGregor is 1.5. So the thing to note here is that Van de Beek is an attacking midfielder. And so far, his attacking output doesn't really scale much higher than Cal McGregor's, which does not bode well. But as I said, much fewer minutes against harder opposition. And then he also has fewer progressive runs than any of the midfielders that Celtic currently have in terms of Hatate, McGregor and O'Reilly. So he does not make as many progressive runs as any of the midfielders that we have in the minutes that he played across those 2 seasons. So what is the conclusion to all those numbers? Well, the thing that you have to note with Van de Beek is that he hasn't really played all that much over the last couple of years. And that impacts the data and that impacts how we view him. a lot of the conclusions around Van de Beek was that he was actually good enough, he just wasn't given the chances. I don't fully buy into that. I think there's definitely something going on with Van de Beek that has worried a couple of managers as well. So the thing about Van de Beek is it's hard to know what he's very good at because he hasn't really been good at much over the last couple of seasons, and that is reflected in the data. So he's supposed to be a creative player. He's well behind Celtic's players in terms of the expected assists, XG. He's barely ahead of McGregor in terms of some of the creative stats. So he hasn't been particularly creative for the teams that he's been playing in. Again, the context is he's not really playing that much for them. In terms of the non-data analysis, what I seen from Van de Beek was a clever player who was a little bit wasteful at times. So he would make a smart run into the box, create some space for himself or someone else, and then he'd get the ball and he'd waste the chance. He was very low on confidence. The move at Manchester United didn't work out at all. So you have to also take that into account. Is he just a player who's really good, who's actually just lacking in confidence, in which case a move to Celtic would be absolutely superb for him. But the thing that really concerns me is that 3 United managers have passed on playing him. Solskjaer signed him and he didn't play him. Ragnick came in and he didn't play him. And now Ten Hag, who had him at Ajax and did play him at Ajax, didn't play him at Manchester United. So whether that speaks to a bad trainer, a player who's not good enough, or something else, it's very hard to know. But the fact that all of them passed on him and then he didn't prove the sacked manager wrong when the following manager came in, that does worry me as something going wrong with Van de Beek's career. Now, my theory is that he peaked at a very young age. He was a really good player, but he lacks discipline tactically to play at the highest level. You notice that a couple of times when he was playing in Europe or playing in the Premier League, that he would often be caught out of position, which would expose the entire team. So he might burst forward, making a run, and then he might leave a giant hole behind him where he's actually supposed to play. That does worry me if he was to come to Celtic. Now, does that mean he's not good enough for Celtic? It absolutely doesn't. Any player who has played in a Champions League semi-final is good enough to play against St Mirren on a Wednesday night. He's definitely a good player, and Celtic could be a perfect move for him to rekindle the player that he was when he was at Ajax. But whether or not he is the player that would move the needle for Celtic drastically in Europe, I would have my doubts. And the risk-reward doesn't really add up to me here for Van de Beek. You'd be paying him massive wages, depending on whether he'd be coming in on loan or if he would be coming in on a full transfer. If it was a full transfer, you'd be paying 20, 30 million out of your transfer kitty, plus your wages. I don't think he's good enough to merit that. And he's not young enough to merit that. He would have no sell-on value. For me, this is firstly a non-story because Celtic can't afford him, and also probably not the best move that Celtic could make anyway. So in terms of Donny van de Beek, is he coming to Celtic? I would say no. In terms of whether he would be good enough for Celtic, obviously he would. Would he be good enough to bring Celtic forward in Europe? I'd have my doubts. That's my general thoughts on the Donny van de Beek rumour. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. And if you like this video, like the video, subscribe, and leave a comment as well. We'll chat to you later, folks. Good luck.